Everyone knows that goaltending in hockey is one of the hardest positions in all of sports. The mental grind and immense pressure that the NHL's masked men endure is arguably unrivaled. However, for these three goalies we're about to talk about, things have been completely unbearable at times for them due to the treatment they received from their head coaches. In this video, we're going to go over a few times that bench bosses have completely screwed over their starting netminders. And with that, here are 3 times that coaches screwed over their own goalies. One could say that John Tortorella's era in Canuckland was significantly short-lived. After joining the team during the offseason of 2013, Torts was given the opportunity to coach a team that still had several of its pieces from its 2011 Stanley Cup run. Tortorella, who was Alain Vigneault's replacement, had an impressive resume, including a Jack Adams Award and, of course, a Stanley Cup ring from Tampa Bay. Despite his success, Torts already had the reputation for being a no-nonsense type of coach. And unfortunately for him, this style tended to rub certain players the wrong way. However, unlike the previous rivalries for Torts up to this point, his biggest feud in BC wouldn't be with a player playing in front of the net, but rather in it, as Roberto Luongo, who had once been dubbed the unofficial captain of the team, was along with the Sedins looked at as one of the team's star players. Luongo was considered to be amongst the best in net during his prime, and even though he was no longer the team's starter, he was still a fan favorite. The whole goalie-coach rift seemed to cultivate after one particular incident. The Canucks were given the rare opportunity to play an outdoor game in the 2014 Heritage Classic, which is basically the Canadian version of the Winter Classic that we have here in the States. Therefore, for Luongo, this had to have been on his bucket list, below winning a Stanley Cup, of course. Unfortunately for him, though, one man decided to stand in the way of his childhood fantasy coming true. Yes, you guessed it. It was John Tortorella. Tortorella made the controversial decision to bench the goalie that was a for sure start, as far as spectators were concerned.
Dress rehearsal for the March 2nd game with wearing equipment?
No, I'm going to wear it tomorrow.
While deciding to play Eddie Lack instead. Besides the fact that Luongo was at that point a much more accomplished veteran, as he had also recorded superb numbers, with a .917 save percentage and a 2.38 goals against average in 48 games played. Coincidentally or not, Luongo was traded 2 days later to Florida thereafter. Around a year later, upon his return to Vancouver, Luongo confirmed what most of us already assumed while saying, quote, "There's no hiding it. I did want to play that game. I mean, that goes without saying. And if I would have played, I probably would maybe still be here. Who knows?" End quote. Patrick Waugh, one of the greatest goaltenders to have ever played the game. Therefore, it's not a huge shock that the feud that he had with head coach at the time, Tremblay, was and still is a huge spectacle amongst hockey fans. The Canadians, at the start of the 95-96 campaign, were looking to shake things up after having a slow start on the season. And one of the solutions for Montreal was to hire coach Mario Tremblay just 4 games into the season to be their new bench boss. For Tremblay, this opportunity was one he was certainly grateful for, as despite playing for the Canadians himself, he had 0 NHL coaching experience prior to. Well, you could say that for Waugh and his new coach, their rivalry was already alive and well, even before Tremblay coached his first game. According to an article from Montreal Gazette, Tremblay already disliked Waugh due to how Jacques Demers, his predecessor, coddled Waugh. The source's words, not mine, so he already had a bias coming in. And the two clashed, according to the source, in a coffee shop on Long Island, the day before Tremblay took the reins as coach. So in hindsight, we can logically say that a disaster had to be on the horizon. Just days into the month of December of '95, what would transpire against the Detroit Red Wings would change the course of Waugh's career forever. You could say that Detroit, who had a stacked team at the time, made a spectacle of Waugh. By the first period's end, the Wings were already up 5-1 on the Habs. Now, most coaches would have given their goalies a yank by this time, but Tremblay, who was likely toying with Waugh at this point, left him in for the second period. As the goals continued to mount, it was clear that Waugh's frustration was as well. Finally, after the fans began jeering the netminder, he He threw up his hands in exasperation, and before the backup could even make his way over to the crease, Sergei Fedorov threw in the last dagger, making it 9-1 Detroit. Unsurprisingly, Waugh left the playing surface visibly furious. But it's what he did after that would shock the hockey world. Due to the prolonged embarrassment at the hands of his coach, Waugh made a beeline over to team president at the time to let him know that he had just played his last game for Montreal. Even after the fact, Tremblay claimed that there was a method to the madness for keeping Waugh in. "I didn't want to put Patrick Waugh out during the game. I preferred to wait until after the second period in the dressing room to tell him," he says. Well, summing all of that up in retrospect, it's pretty fair to assume that Tremblay did what he did on purpose to the star netminder due to their ongoing feud. As for Waugh, following the 11-1 loss, the franchise's worst game to date, he was put out of his misery and traded to Colorado, where he would go on to win 2 more Stanley Cups thereafter. And for the final rivalry on this list, we'll be turning to the most recent one. After the Vegas Golden Knights made the strange choice to bring in Peter DeBoer, the starting goalies that manned the crease during his tenure were arguably misused. However, following the Marc-Andre Fleury trade, many believed that DeBoer would be settling down when it came to his questionable antics regarding his goalies. DeBoer, who was hired in January of 2020, had seemed to take quite the liking to Robin Lehner early on. Leonard was given a lengthy 5-year, $25 million contract in October of the same year, which seemed to give fans the assurance that the Panda wouldn't be going anywhere. Well, with Fleury out of the picture, all of the expectations fell onto Leonard's shoulder in nets. With no real solidified backup to lean on, things went from bad to worse for the netminder, as his team fell further down in the standings during the 2021-22 season. By the time the regular season began to wind down, however, was when the drama between Leonard and DeBoer seemed to surface. For starters, Leonard had been playing through a combination of injuries for over a month by the time the calendars hit mid-April. It was blatantly obvious that he wasn't himself during the Knights game against New Jersey. After letting in 2 questionable goals that, if healthy, he probably would have saved, Leonard was made to start the next contest against Washington as well. This time though, he wouldn't escape being pulled. After he surrendered just a single goal, DeBoer made the questionable decision to pull Leonard after the first period's end. The game itself took place on the 20th of April, and it was just 2 days later that ESPN broke some news that shed some light on how bad Leonard's situation truly was. On April 22nd of this year, ESPN finally reported that the goaltender had sustained a season-ending injury that required surgery. To make things even worse, this story was broken about a month after the report that surfaced in mid-March that Leonard required crutches just to get around. The team, however, continued to overlook their goalie's ailments and even seemed in denial about them. Puzzling enough, after Leonard didn't appear at practice when the coach was asked to confirm if the reports were true or not, DeBoer simply said, quote, "I expect him at practice tomorrow. I expect him to dress on Sunday against the San Jose Sharks. Nobody's healthy. Everybody's got something. There's nothing physically that is a play issue in my conversations with anybody." End quote. Well, if that wasn't already enough ammo to despise your head coach for not caring about your well-being, we're still not done. For the final slap in the face per se, Leonard was made to dress for the team's final home game against San Jose. But instead of starting, the injured Tendy was given the job of bench warming as a backup. Keep in mind too, this was after DeBoer ripped his netminder countless times in press conferences and displayed a blatant disregard for his physical health. At this point in time, even though DeBoer has been let go, many are still wondering if the strained relationship that Leonard has with the team can even be repaired.